Hello everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to my channel, The Cheryl Hubbard Show. Glad you can be here. Glad to see you. Glad you could join me. So today I just want to sit back right here, talk a little bit about a few things that's happening around the world. Welcome. I want to say first, welcome to my channel. Glad you could be here. Glad you could join me. I want to say first, giving honor to God. God, I want to thank you for everything you've done for me in my life. Thank you for waking me up this morning. Thank you for blessing me and all the people around the world. And thank you for blessing and praying for the protesters. So there's a lot going on around the world today. And with all the protesting going on, and it's a good reason for the protest, for the protesters to be out there. So I'm kind of glad they are out there. I'm glad they're out there and they're, exercising their First Amendment rights. So we had several killings from the, I guess you can say, African Americans. The African Americans have been, male and female African Americans have been killed by the police. So what I want to say is that I know there are good policemen out there, but at this time I want to say everybody's out there saying Black Lives, Black Lives Matter. So a lot of our young Black African American men have been killed by the police. But we wasn't there. We don't, we didn't witness it, but we did see the videotapes. So a lot of African Americans, some Caucasian, Asians, and everybody of different races have, seen this video when George Floyd was killed right on TV, right on the cell phone. They recorded it on the cell phone, and we all wish that nothing like this would have happened, but wish that it could have been stopped. But justice will be served, and so what I want to say at the same time is that yes, it was videotaped. It was videotaped on a cell phone, and sorry to I really didn't want to. It was just horrific. It was so horrific that I just can't believe that something like that had happened. Because I had heard about George Floyd being killed, but I hadn't seen the video. So I was just watching TV that day, and I think it was, I don't know if it was TMZ or the news. It probably was the news, I guess, I was watching. And I just happened to see the video while I was sitting right here, and I said, oh, Lord. I just couldn't believe my eyes. And then I know Ahmaud Arbery had just been shot to death probably like, 2 weeks prior to that. And then we had Breonna Taylor, and it was just so many of our African American male and females that have been killed, at the hands of the police. So, but I had a list of names right here, and it's just so many, Freddie Gray. So we have Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. We have Breonna Taylor, Freddie Gray, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner. Remember, he was killed in New York by the officers through chokehold. Kai Gurley. We have David McAtee. We have another gentleman named Sean Reed. He was killed May the 6th. 21-year-old U.S. military veteran who was unarmed. Reed live streamed the episode on Facebook, unbeknownst to the police. Unbeknownst to the police, he was Sean Reed. He was live streaming the episode right on Facebook. And then I have another gentleman named Stephen DeMarco Taylor, a 33-year-old father of three. Said he was holding a baseball bat and having a manic episode when he was tasered multiple times and shot in a Walmart store in Northern California. And then we have Ariane McCree, shot and killed by two Chester police officers in South Carolina after being detained for allegedly shoplifting at Walmart on November 23rd. And then we have another gentleman, Terrence Franklin, 22 years old and unarmed, when he was killed by police in a dark basement. He was killed in a dark basement by Minneapolis SWAT officers. So this is just a few. And I went on the internet just to do some research because I wanted to just see how many of our young black men and women, that were killed. So I knew I had in my memory, I had certain ones just stuck in my head, and it's like you don't want to believe this type of thing is still going on. And I mean, this is 2020, and even last year, 2019. So it just seems like it's just unreal, So a lot of people are out there protesting and protesting because they're exercising their First Amendment rights. And so we're all looking for a change. We're all looking for a change because this should not be happening, and nothing will get better unless we, come together. We have to come together, and we all have to come together and believe in the same thing. We can't have some believe in, prejudice. In other words, you can't have some people, the majority prejudice and racist, and then half of these people over here racist and some of these people over here not, So it's, we just have to, we want to see a change, and we're fighting for a change. And that's what the protests, that's what the protests are all about. And Congress, they are stepping up now. They are, getting bills ready, preparing bills so they can, implement this police reform. So they're working on that. And then protesters, they are out there, it was all over the world. I looked at the news and I saw they were out there protesting in London, everywhere. North Carolina, South Carolina, Washington, D.C. And I was shocked when I saw them down. I'm right here in Washington, D.C., so I saw the protesters right down there by the White House. So I said, do what you do. Exercise your First Amendment rights, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. And so, and also just want to talk a little bit about the first police. The first police force was started in London by a gentleman named Robert Peel, 1829. Robert Peel started the first police force, and it was called the Bobbies. And the first 1,000 of Peel's police officers, they patrolled the streets of London September 29th, 1829. So I learned about him in one of my courses in Strayer University. And so their uniforms were very different from that was back in the day. That was, 1829? Yeah, 1829. So the uniforms were very different. See, they wore long blue coats and tall hats. And the hats were to protect them from getting blows to the head. The only weapon they had was let me put my glasses on real quick. The only weapon they had was a wooden truncheon carried in a long pocket in the tail of their coat. So the only weapon they had was a wooden truncheon carried. I don't know what that was, but they didn't show that on the picture. But I would like to see what that looks like. They carried it in a long pocket in the tail of their coat, and they had also had handcuffs and a wooden rattle. And they had a wooden rattle so they can, rattle for the alarm. And that's all they had. They had no other weapons, no guns or nothing like that. It said later on, they replaced the rattle for a whistle. So just think about back then, the first police force started by a gentleman named Robert Peel. They had no weapon. Anything can be used as a weapon. When it comes to law, I studied, I took a little bit of law. I have my paralegal diploma. So anything can be used as a weapon. But they didn't have any guns back then. So I'm wondering if we should go back to those days of 1829, the first police force, Robert Peel. So let me see what else I have. Yeah, Robert Peel, the first police force, 1829. He sent 1,000 police officers. 1,000 police officers patrolled the streets of London, 1829. Let me see what else I have. Okay, just a couple things. Okay, one thing I want to talk about, there's no knock warrant. So some states, I don't know, I haven't done my research to find out whether or not every state, I don't know if every state acknowledges the no knock warrant, but I know where the state that Breonna Taylor was killed in, they did practice the no knock warrant, but I think they banned it now because they voted to ban that no knock warrant. So in other words, the police officers don't have to do too much, but they do acknowledge that they are the police. They just let you know that we are the police. We're at your door. We're the police. That's all they let you know. And then, if you don't open the door, they may kick your door in. So that's what they call a no knock warrant. And they usually carry out a no knock warrant in most drug cases when I guess the judge feels that, in certain cases, in those drug cases, if they feel that the officers' lives are in danger, they may issue a no-knock warrant, or if they feel that, number one, if it's they feel that the officers' lives are in danger. Number two, they may feel that the suspects may hide evidence. So that's why they may issue a no-knock warrant in, most drug cases. And so then, you have the regular warrant. You have your regular warrant, your bench warrant, your regular warrant, and they may, I don't know if they send you a letter or not, but if you, most of the time, you can probably check online, excuse me, in your state, and they do have a listing online of warrants. That way, if you find out you have a warrant, you can turn yourself in, or if you're out there in the street and they catch you on a traffic stop, then they run your name in and they can find out that way too. But that's like a regular warrant. If you have a bench warrant, in other words, if you don't answer, I guess if you don't answer the first warrant, and when they, if you find out that you have a warrant and you don't answer, then they can also put that bench warrant out on you. But that no-knock warrant, then, regular warrants. And so let me see what I have. think I had a couple other terms. So another term I have, okay, then I have the plain view doctrine. So basically the plain view doctrine, if the police, you know, if you are encountered by the police and they happen to see something, you know, in other words, if they pull you over in your car and they see, and they're questioning you, the officer standing by your window, and he just happened to see that you have maybe a gun. You got a gun on the side of you got a gun on the passenger's, in the seat, your passenger seat, and they happen to see that, then they can use that against you in a court of law. They can use that as evidence against you because that comes under the plain view doctrine. And so I have on here plain view doctrine, searches and seizures, the principle that provides that objects it says in the context of searches and seizures, the principle that provides that objects perceptible by an officer who is rightfully in a position to observe them can be seized without a search warrant and are admissible as evidence. So in other words, if an officer observes something, you know, illegal and is visible to his eyes, like I said, it could be weed or whatever, a gun or something illegal, and he see it and it's visible to him, you know, under searches and seizures, then, you know, he's searching. He's not searching, he just happened to see it. So he just happened to see it, and it says he doesn't need a search warrant, and it definitely would be admissible in a court of law. So that's the plain view doctrine. Anything that's visible to the officer is visible to, and the officer can see it, then, you know, then they can use it as evidence against you. So then I have another term that I talked about a while. I think I talked about this in one of my other videos. And this one is called the broken windows theory. So we have the no-knock warrant. We have a regular warrant. We have, what did I say? I said, what did I say? I said, okay. I don't have, no, that's not a term. I think I just said the no-knock warrant, and I was talking about the regular warrant. And, no-knock warrant, regular warrant, plain view doctrine, and now we have the broken windows theory. So in other words, a broken windows theory is basically, well, it's not basic, it's like, I would say no tolerance. So in other words, no tolerance. And in other words, if you are caught, or if you are observed by a police officer, and you are, you know, my opinion, I'm just thinking, you know, just something small. You run a traffic light, you run a stop sign, you run a red light, and you are stopped by an officer under the no tolerance theory of, you know, my theory. So I would say no tolerance. I mean, I would include, I don't know if they would include running a traffic light. I mean, citizens, we don't really consider that no crime, but they look at everything. That's why I say no tolerance. So in other words, if you run a traffic light, they may figure, hey, according to the broken windows theory, if you run a light, you caught with a couple crumbs of weed, or you jaywalking, they may figure, hey, we're going to give her a ticket, we're going to give her a fine, because that she did right there, or he did right there, could lead to a bigger crime. So a lot of times they like to stop the smaller crimes so they won't lead to a bigger crime. So that's why they say, that's why a lot of laws have changed with the marijuana laws have changed, because they were looking at the broken windows theory. They catch you with a couple crumbs, you're caught with a couple crimes, and then they still going try to give you some type of charge. So Obama, he changed the laws, and when it comes to marijuana, so you have to read up on the laws. I'm not a lawyer, but read up on the laws in your state when it comes to those type of things. So the broken windows theory. So let me read the definition. I just gave my little definition. But it says the theory suggests that punishing citizens for minor infractions lowers overall crime by disincentivizing people from committing said crime. Said crime. Broken windows, that means zero tolerance, is a zero tolerance policy. So in other words, a minor infraction, like I said, running a stop sign, a couple crumbs, I would say, couple crumbs of weed, So how can you have a zero tolerance if you got a couple crumbs or you ran a stop sign? So zero tolerance means, nothing. I mean, you can have a couple $1,000s worth of tickets, so I guess they talking about everything, no tolerance, So, but broken windows theory, I learned about that in my class too, down Australia University, in my business law class. So we had a lot of. I still have my business law book, so I'll be bringing out some other terms. But broken windows, so it means punishing citizens for minor infractions. So in other words, if you have a minor infraction and you're punished, you get caught by the police. And they figure if you are punished for those small infractions, those minor infractions, you will not be apt to commit a larger infraction or a larger crime, in the future. So it said punishing citizens for minor infractions. They figure maybe if we punish them for these minor infractions and maybe they learn and they'll be more appreciative about being out in society, and they won't come back out here and commit no bigger crimes, no larger crimes. So in other words, small crime can be, like I said, you got a few crumbs of weed, you ran a stop sign, or you hit somebody in the face, or you got in a fight, or you broke in his house, stole some jewelry, you stole somebody's car. I mean, when you steal somebody's car, that's a grand theft auto, but that would be a larger crime. So in other words, they try to figure if we punish them for these small crimes, there won't be no chance of them coming back and committing a bigger, larger crime. Say, for instance, somebody, like I said, somebody hit somebody in the face, hit somebody in the face, that could be assault and battery, but that is a felony. So, but, assault and battery. So that is the broken windows theory. And so, let me jump back over to what's in the news right now. Let's jump back. I want to jump back over there, okay? So a lot of protests are going on. A lot of African American men have been killed, so, but, and then it brings up the issue of, it brings back a lot of memories, back in the slavery times when our ancestors were, enslaved, but we don't really know. I guess you have to do your research because some of these slaves were free. So you have to do your research and find out whether or not your ancestors were slaves. So I don't know if any of my ancestors were slaves, but I have heard some of my friends say that they have found out that some of their ancestors were slaves, but I don't have any information to say that any of my ancestors were slaves. So I would definitely have to do my research. But these type of situations that's going on now around the world, all the protests in London, Washington, D.C., Paris, down North Carolina, South Carolina, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Atlanta, Georgia, California. I mean, when you look at the news, I guess they finished I don't know if they finished protesting now, but I don't think they're protesting anymore in Washington D.C. But I have to check out the news. But they may still be protesting. But when you think about these situations, these situations that happened recently, then slavery comes back to your mind, and discrimination, prejudices, racism, all those terms come back in your mind, and you be like, wait a minute now, I thought we were done with these type of terms and these type of acts, heinous acts, and these type of hatred acts. So I thought we were done with those type of things. So, but so when these unnecessary killings, when we think about them, when we look at them, we see the videotapes, we watch the news, then hatred and slavery and racism comes to mind, and we already know that is the only explanation that we can think of why something like this would be happening. So a lot of times things are just brushed under the table, and people are ready for change. Congress is implementing their reform, and a lot of things have changed. So a lot of things have changed, and where we're trying to make a change through, protesting and having our voices heard. And it said that, hey, this is time. This is not going to happen again. It shouldn't happen again. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. So I feel my heart goes out to all those families that lost a loved one. They lost a loved one in those type of heinous, hateful acts. And so it takes us back to slavery and what our ancestors had to go through. I don't know. Even if my ancestors were not directly not involved in slavery or was not a slave, I have to do my research, but it still affects me when I think about how the African American male and female males were forced. They were forced onto these ships and forced into slavery. Now I did a little research too on slavery. It said, when did slavery start? Slavery started in the 17th and 18th century. People were kidnapped from the continent of Africa, forced into slavery in the American colonies, and exploited to work as indentured servants and labor in the production of crops such as tobacco and cotton. So they worked as they were forced into slavery, and they also worked as indentured servants. And the indentured servants those are the slaves the indentured servants, they were, what they did, they worked for their passage. So in other words, the money that they made while they were working maybe in a cotton field or wherever, they used that money for transportation. So they used that money. So those were the indentured servants. And then it says, by the mid-19th century, the abolitionist movement and slavery provoked bad blood in people that tore the nation apart in a bloody civil war. So all this slavery was going on, and by the mid-19th century, then the abolitionists got involved. The abolitionists were the people that wanted to abolish slavery, wanted to get rid of slavery. So once they start getting their head together and saying, hey, we're going to have to have some change. We can't have this slavery going on, in the world like this. We can't have this slavery going on. So that's what created the Civil War. That's what created the Civil War. And then it says, when slavery started in 1619, it says the White Line brought 20 African slaves ashore in the British colony of Jamestown, Virginia. The crew had seized the Africans from the Portuguese slave ships Sao, Bautista. So in other words, they had the White Lion. They brought 20 African slaves to the British colony in Jamestown, Virginia, because they seized. So in other words, they took these slaves from somebody else that was keeping slaves. So they seized these slaves. They said the crew had seized the Africans from the Portuguese slave ships. So they stole these slaves from the slave ships. And then they started using the slaves for their own purpose. You know, the slaves out there in the field picking cotton and doing all the work. They had the slaves doing all the work and didn't pay them anything. So, you know, you stole these slaves off the slave ship. And it says throughout the 17th century, Europe's settlers in North America turned to African slaves as cheaper, more plentiful labor source, a cheaper, more plentiful labor source than indentured servants, who were mostly poor Europeans. So what they did, they used these slaves because they can get cheap labor. You got the slaves out there working in the field and doing all this hard work in cotton fields, and you know, then sometimes they would have, you know, sometimes the masters would have sexual relations with those slaves for favors, you know. But the ones that were obedient, they were beaten. The ones that were obedient, they were beaten. But the other ones that they got favors out of, and they got favors out of them, and they gave, you know, they rewarded them with, you know, favors. They rewarded them with favors and gifts and stuff like that, I guess. And then it says, in the 17th and 18th century, enslaved Africans worked mainly on tobacco, rice, indigo plantations of the southern coast, from the Chesapeake Bay colonies of Maryland and Virginia south of Georgia. Just imagine, when you think about Georgia today and Maryland and Virginia, you're like, you know what? That's where they were holding slaves, right there in Virginia. Virginia, Georgia, Maryland, and even Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. had slaves too. And then another thing is good to know, I remember Michelle Obama, when she gave her speech, she said she was so proud to wake up every daggone morning knowing that the slaves had built the White House. I know the White House was burnt. They burnt the White House to the ground years ago, and then they had to rebuild it. So the slaves built the White House, and African Americans built this country. So when they say go back to Africa, I'm like, you know, a lot of our ancestors were forced to come over here. They were forced on those slave ships and forced to come, and you know, they didn't even know their names. They didn't have any paperwork on themselves, and they had kids, and you know, they had kids, and they were separated. Sometimes they were separated from their children and the children's fathers, and they were forced over here on those slave ships. And so it says, White House was built by slaves. Slaves built other iconic buildings as well. And it says the Statue of Freedom that sits atop the Capitol Dome was made with the help of Philip Reed, a man enslaved by sculptor Thomas Crawford, who was commissioned to build the statue. So in other words, a slave built a statue. The Statue of Freedom that sits atop the Capitol Dome was made with the help of Philip Reed, a man enslaved by sculptor Thomas Crawford. So Thomas Crawford owned a slave named Philip Reed, and Philip Reed was the one that designed this statue, the Statue of Freedom, the Statue of Freedom. And then we also have something called the Dion Diamond Civil Rights. Dion Diamond, a civil rights activist. That's a gentleman named Dion Diamond. Dion Diamond. Matter of fact, I think he was just on the news today, because I think this was 1960. Dion Diamond, and he was a civil rights activist. Okay, and it had a picture on the, when I went on the internet, it had a picture of him. He just initiated a sit-in. See, he reflected on a sit-in right in Arlington, Virginia. He reflects on a sit-in at Arlington lunch counter. He was protesting against segregation, June 10th, 1960. Just think that was what, 50, wow, that was 58 years ago. More than that. Let's see, 1960, this is 2020. Yeah, so 1960, yeah, that was about 60 years ago. Yeah, that was about 60 years ago. It said Diamond was one of 13 individuals, seven African, and six white, who were refused at a people's drug in Arlington, Virginia. And matter of fact, I just saw him in the news today, Channel 5, Fox 5. So he stays to sit in because a lot of times, it gets to you, it gets to your heart, and it says, you think about things, you say, look, things have to change. I want to do something. I want to make my voice heard. So that's why the protesters are out there. And they're out there all around the country, all around the world. They want to make their voices heard because even the younger generation, they are out there, 20-something-year-olds, 30-something-year-olds. And I watched on the news, I said, well, these, they were getting shot with rubber bullets and hit with sticks. And I was like, oh my God, and imagine out there you getting shot with rubber bullets and they swinging sticks and they showed where I saw where they was on Swan Street. They were on Swan Street trying to run away from the police, trying to find somebody's house to go in because they felt that they were going to get hurt. Cause tear gas was flying everywhere and smoke and sticks were being swung and they was just they was running and then they did have on the news that one gentleman he did let them in and he did let some of them in his house. And they stayed till the next day, the next morning. Well, I was so glad they got out the way. I was just so glad. And they were so, youngsters out there protesting. So want to make their voices heard. So the gentleman let them in the house. And I was so glad when I saw the news. I said, I was just so glad I had, all that just, when you look at it every day, it just makes you feel like you want to, I did cry a little. Because I said, what kind of world are we living in? We definitely, things just have to get better. We can't live like this. Just can't not live like this. God made us all equal. When we get cut, we all bleed the same. So, there's no reason it should be no reason, but everybody have their own opinion. Everybody have their own, the way, everybody, have their own way that they see things, I know we are from different cultures, but, we still, what's wrong with trying to get along? We went through this Martin Luther King, when we went through this when they had to march on Washington, Martin Luther King in those days. And then, so then we still marching and Martin Luther King, that was wow. What was that, 1968? I said, we still marching. I said, wow, wow. And then we have to think about our own children, So they gonna be marching in the next 5 or 10 years? Do they still have to march? And we can change things and make things better, so our children and our children's children won't have to be out there marching. Because that's just going on too long. I mean, slavery and all that did. I mean, they say that was, when you look at your history and do your research, that's 400 years. That was 400 years that our ancestors, and or it might not have been our ancestors. All our ancestors may not have been slaves, but like I said, you have to do your research to find out. But we may have friends that had ancestors that were, forced into slavery. So let me see what else I have. So And then I have after the American Revolution, many colonists, particularly in the North, where slavery was relatively unimportant to the agricultural economy began to link the oppression of enslaved Africans to their own oppression by the British and to call for slavery's abolition. So they, I guess after a while, certain states were like, we need to get rid of this slavery. So when Frederick Douglass came along and Harriet Tubman, and they, started these safe houses. So these safe houses they call the Underground Railroad. So let me see. After the Revolutionary War, the new U.S. Constitution tacitly acknowledged the institution of slavery, counting each enslaved individual as 3/5 of a person for the purposes of taxation and representation in Congress, and guaranteeing the right to repossess any person held to service or labor. So in other words, they're saying that the Constitution gave them the right to possess slaves and taxation. So it says they were considered to be 3/5 of a person. Imagine you're just three fifths of a person. No, you're supposed to be that. That ain't even a whole person. So in other words, they were 3/5. They were considered 3/5 of a person. Basically, they probably didn't even know their name, or they might have been given other names by their masters. So and imagine being 3/5 of a person, given a different name that you don't even know, no paperwork, no birth certificates, no type of written information on you, and you just out there working for no money. And slaves are basically slaves are 3/5 of a person, and then your rights were taken away. You had no rights, no human rights, no civil rights, no kind of rights. So let me see what's next. And then we had somebody came along called Eli Whitney. Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin, so that only made it easier for the slaves, So the cotton gin was a mechanized device that removed the seeds. So I guess it removed the seeds out of the cotton and made it, easier for the slaves to use. So when they picking that cotton, they can do whatever the master said he wanted them to do. That's what they had to do. So U.S. Congress outlawed the African slave trade in 1808. Slavery was widespread in the South. So the North, they're saying that the North didn't have slavery that much, but it was in the South. Many slaves were not allowed to read and write. Behaviors and movements were restricted. So that's why I say, so that is one of the reasons why I went and got my degree, because I know back in the day we could not read, we could not write. Our ancestors couldn't read and couldn't write. And then when you think about things like that and the way they, kidnapped these African Americans and forced them on these ships, forced them into slavery. Imagine being forced into slavery and you all chained up. You have no rights. You have no human rights, no civil rights. You out there picking cotton and you're not getting paid. And you just imagine being a slave for 10, 15, 20 years. And then you lost a whole lot. That's why they were talking about the reparations, But I mean, a lot of the slaves that were back in the day, they're not, they won't be allowed to collect the reparations. But I mean, I feel they had family members. So you took the livelihood away from those people, from our ancestors. You took the livelihood away from them. They wasn't able to work for 10, 15, 20 years and couldn't file for taxes. Didn't make no kind of money. Cheap labor. So they had, so slavery was too much. That's why people don't understand when certain people don't understand when they say, well, you know what, African Americans keep on bringing up this slavery thing. Why don't y'all get over it? It's hard to get over. It's hard to get over when you think about the way our ancestors were treated. So we try to move on with our life, with our lives. But when we think about that, and then you forced them into slavery, brought them over here on a ship from Africa, and then got them working in the cotton fields, and then masters having sex with them when they want to, and probably had several babies by a lot of the slaves. And so I know it was written, it's in history. I know it's in, I think some of the presidents were, some of the presidents had slaves and they ended up having kids with them. But, so that is for another video. That's what it said right here. Many masters took sexual liberties with enslaved women, rewarded obedient behavior with favors. Rebellious enslaved people were brutally punished. And then we come across the abolitionist movement. The repression of Southern black people fanned the flames of the growing abolitionist movement. From 1830s to 1860s, the movement to abolish slavery gained strength, led by free black people such as Frederick Douglass, and white supporters such as William Lloyd Garrison, founder of the radical newspaper, The Liberator, and Harriet Beecher Stowe. Yep, I remember all these names. Sometimes when you read over this stuff, the names come back to your memory. Harriet Beecher Stowe, who published the best-selling anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. I remember that book too. I never read it, but I remember that name of that book. Abolitionists believed slaveholding was a sin. Others believed the regressive, inefficient argument and made no economic sense. Others believed the regressive and inefficient argument and made no economic sense. Free black people and other anti-slavery northerners had begun helping enslaved people escape from southern plantations to the north via a loose network of safe houses in the 1780s. This practice, known as the Underground Railroad, gained real momentum in the early 1930s. Conductors like Harriet Tubman guided escapes on their journey north, and station masters included such prominent figures as Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, they got together and they created these safe houses so they can help move a lot of these slaves, so they can help free a lot of these slaves. So, yep, so that's what it said. Free black people. Frederick Douglass was free, and Frederick Douglass was free. It said Frederick Douglass, free black people and other anti-slavery northerners had begun helping enslaved people escape from southern plantations to the north via a loose network of safe houses called the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass guided escapes on their journey, and station masters included such prominent figures as Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman. So they created these safe houses called the Underground Railroad, trying to help these slaves get out of captivity. Then we had the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1850, the Mexican-American War. The Kansas-Nebraska Act opened all new territories to slavery by asserting the rule of popular sovereignty over congressional edict, leading pro and anti-slavery forces to battle it out with considerable bloodshed in the new state of Kansas. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision by Supreme Court involving an enslaved man who sued his freedom. He sued for his freedom on the grounds that his master had taken him into free territory effectively repealed the Missouri Compromise by ruling that all territories were open to slavery. So the Dred Scott decision. So in other words, he took it all the way to the Supreme Court and was saying that his master, in other words, his master traveled with him to a free state, but he was considered a slave, Dred Scott. So in other words, he figured, you take me to a free state, then I'm free, you know. So he took it to the Supreme Court. Took it to the Supreme Court. It says for his freedom. He sued for his freedom on the grounds that his master had taken him into free territory. So Dred Scott. Free territory effectively repealed the Missouri Compromise by ruling that all territories were open to slavery. So all territories were open to slavery. And I think that is it. Oh, I just got a couple more. We're talking about, I had the 4th Amendment, 5th Amendment. Okay, the 4th Amendment. No warrant shall be issued upon probable cause, supported by oath of affirmation, and must particularly describe the place to be searched. So in other words, the 4th Amendment, I guess that will come under the privacy rights. So no warrant shall be issued upon probable cause. So you can't issue a warrant unless you have probable cause. In other words, you roll up on somebody and they you smell weed in the car or something, you know, you smell it but you don't see it, you smell it, but that may give you probable, you know, the officer may say, well, look, you know, I smell like you had weed, you smell like you were smoking weed. Have you been smoking weed? Your eyes are red, you know, and try to get you with that one. I know you've been smoking weed, your eyes are red, but you know, hey, no, my eyes are red because I just got through taking my medicine. Well, I was asleep right here and I was laying back for a minute and I was rubbing my eyes and they turned red. You know, but if they smelled marijuana, they could be like, well, you know, I smelled it. They give me probable cause. Hey, you know what? Step out of the car. Let me search your car. Nah, you know, you can't search my car. So, you know, probable cause, when they feel that they have probable cause is that little bit of evidence that can lead them to thinking that there may be more. There may be more where that came from. So, a lot of times, just, you know, you out there, just, you know, me, when I'm driving, a lot of times they behind me, they may be following me, they may be behind me, but you get the feeling that they following you, but, you know, just remain calm and say, hey, you know I haven't done anything wrong, and just try to listen to what they're saying, and like I said, when they say hands up, don't shoot. You know, put your hands up in the air. They say, hey, you know, get out the car. Can you step out the car, lady? Can you step out the car, gentlemen? You know, just we always want to adhere to what the officer is saying, because that's his job, to keep order and protect and serve, keep ordering the communities, and so, you know, just comply, and hope and pray that, you know, because we never know what type of person we're gonna run across when they say, hey, miss, step out the car, you know, get on the ground. I know back in the day, my husband, they stopped him. I don't know where he was, somewhere he told me, you know. Said, honey, they told me, he said he had a white suit on, and they said, man, get out the car, man, get on the ground. He had a whole all white suit on, because he always liked to dress nice. Because he was one that was smart and knew the law real good with music, good with accounting, good with business, good with law, good with just smart, you know, all around smart, and always liked to keep himself neat and clean, nice suits on, nice shoes, and keep his hair cut, very articulate. So I don't know why they pulled him over that day, but he had a white suit on, and he was like, they said, man, get on the ground. And he like, look, get on the ground. I mean, I don't know why they want everybody to get on the ground. It's beyond me. But he said, look, I don't want to get on the ground. I got a white suit on, you know. So I don't know how, I mean, I don't know if he got on the ground or not, but that's what, you know, he told me. But I like, so that's how that go. But I just said, you know, just sometimes you just have to comply and, you know, hope and pray that, you know, you don't know what type of officer that you want to run into, because some of them are nice and some of them might not be nice. And we had let's see, I just read the 4th Amendment. Okay, okay. In other words, the Fourth Amendment too, the right of the people to be secure in their persons. So, like I said, it comes under your privacy rights. In other words, they may say, "Can I search you?" They're like, "No, you can't go in my pockets without my permission." So, you have a right to privacy. You have a right to your private possessions in your pocket. You know. So it said that's why I say the right of the people to be secure in their persons. So anything on you in your pockets is on your person. Your person is your body, yourself, you. Uh, it says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. So in other words, you know, you got anything you have on your person belongs to you. You know, what's in your pocket, you might, you know, in other words, you got a necklace on, you know, anything on my body is on my person. And then we had the Fifth Amendment, guarantee the rights to a grand jury, forbid double jeopardy. So in other words, you can't be tried twice, I guess. I guess that's how they go. You can't be tried twice for the same crime. But I'm wondering if it's, yeah, I mean, you have to read into the law because sometimes there's a whole lot of other stuff, you know, that goes with that because, you know, what if you're in a different state? A lot of times, you know, you see some cases where they try you in one state, then they can try you up in another state. So you can't be tried twice probably in that same state. But, you know, but if you have several consecutive charges, you know, you have one in Virginia, you got the same one in Maryland and Virginia, or they can try you probably in a different state. But not that same state. Guarantee the right to a grand jury, forbids double jeopardy, and protects against self-incrimination. So, in other words, Fifth Amendment, you don't have to testify against yourself. Say, for instance, if there's a jury trial, hey, say, look, I don't care to say anything. I have the right to remain silent. So, I want to remain silent. I don't want to incriminate myself. So, Fifth Amendment, fear of self-incrimination. Or I have the right to remain silent. Another term I didn't put on the paper, but I talked about it before, and Miranda. So I talked about the broken windows theory, plain view doctrine. Okay, it's I just talked about one more. Yeah, I talked about the first police force, which is the London Bobbies, Bobbies, 1829, Sir Robert Peel, the first 1,000 Peel's police began to patrol the streets of London, September 29th, 1829, Robert Peel. So like I said, they didn't have any weapons, or they didn't have any guns, but they had, only weapon was a wooden truncheon carried in a long pocket, a long tail hat, handcuffs, and a rattle. And then later on, they traded the rattle for a whistle. And one last term that I'm just going to talk about, and that is Miranda. So, where did the Miranda rights come from? Well, the Miranda. The Miranda rights came from a gentleman named Ernesto Miranda. And I read up on him too in my business law class. So in other words, he was charged with rape. And he wasn't read his rights. And his name was Ernesto Miranda. And he wasn't read his rights. You know, you have a right to remain silent. Everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And they didn't read him his rights, so that's where the Miranda rights that's where it came from. So Ernesto Miranda, they didn't read him his rights, and I guess he got a lawyer, and then they took the case all the way to the Supreme Court, and I think he won the case. Yeah, so you have to read up on it. So look it up, Ernesto Miranda, and that's you ask yourself, where did the Miranda rights come from? So read up on that case right there. And then there's a lot of cases. I mean, always been intrigued with learning law, studying law, because I know my teacher told me back in the day when I was at Strayer University, he singled me out and said, look, you should go to law school, because they know I was on it, you know. I always did my work. I got a B in business law, and also took a law class at I started with Liberty University. I took a law class there too. And then when I got to Australia, I think I took one law class in Australia. And I took a law class at Liberty University. And then I took several law courses. I took a course with paralegal tech. And I also took, I took a course with paralegal tech. So I do have my paralegal diploma. So I took several other law classes like constitutional law, contract law, and different courses that I took, you know. So that I do have my paralegal diploma. So as I was saying, Ernesto, Miranda, and you know, sometimes when you get a chance, just read up on your amendments. You have the First Amendment, freedom of speech and religion, freedom of the press. Then you also have right to bear arms was at the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, and then you got the Fourth and the Fifth. So I need to review my amendments as well. Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. You got it. It's all the way up to, I think it's 27 amendments. 27 amendments to the Constitution. You know, every state has a constitution. Every state has their own constitution, but then there is one constitution for the United States of America. That's one constitution. So, you know, and then we have the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, you know, right to, you know, bear arms, right to, you know, all your rights, all your Bill of Rights. You know, I have to review mine as well too, but I should have put that on this paper too. So I should have put all the Bill of Rights on there, but I didn't do that. But so the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. So, you know, read up on your amendments, all your amendments to the Constitution, and I think that was the last one. So I mean, you know, so like I said, all this protesting and all that stuff going on around the world, I'm just so glad, and I feel so glad that, you know, they are out there protesting. I figure fight for your rights, you know, protest, you know, freedom of speech, the First Amendment, freedom of speech and religion, and so I feel, you know, they're out there protesting and you know, want to have their voices heard. So it's about time for change, you know. So I read all the names off. You know, the gentlemen that were killed. And then Breonna Taylor, you know, she was just in her house and they thought somebody was breaking in their house and they ended up coming in there and shooting her. They shot her and killed her. And that was the issue they had. Well, it was a no-knock warrant that was issued. And so I want to close on that note, my last term. So I want to close on that note. I think that was it. I talked about a couple of amendments. So next time I write down all of the, you know, the Bill of Rights, and then I might I'll put some, you know, I'll talk about some other legal terms. But I want to say thanks for joining me today, and I'm so glad that you can be here. Glad to see you. So glad you could join me. And just wanted to talk a little bit about what was going on around the world today. And I saw a lot of celebrities that came forward and made their little speeches. A lot of them made donations, and everybody just coming together. You know, it's basically standing up and fighting for the rights of all citizens. You know, all of us. You know, we don't have to put a color on everything, but everybody can work together. I mean, for far speaking up, you know, everybody speaking up together, everybody coming together and So that's, when that's the only way you're going to basically bring about change, when everybody come together and speak and know that, hey, I saw that, I witnessed that, and that was wrong. So that's for everybody to acknowledge. I saw that. This person can come forward, and that person can come forward. I can come forward and say, I saw that. He can say, oh, I saw that. Then the next person, I saw that. That was wrong. That was wrong. That was murder, That was wrong. So when we acknowledge that, we come together and everybody say that, hey, that was wrong. And I like what the chief of police said right here in Washington, D.C. He said, now, if anybody, what he said, I think he said something to, I don't know his exact words, but he said something to the effect of, if you don't think that that was wrong, what happened to George Floyd, if you don't think it was wrong, then turn in your police badge and gun and everything. Turn everything in. So if you don't think that was wrong, so that would, that is what has to be acknowledged first of all. That has to be acknowledged, and it goes without saying. It was right there, plain as day, right on the cell phone video. That was wrong. That was a killing. That was a murder. You're gonna sit on somebody's neck for 8.5, I can't say what I want to say, but 8.5 minutes. You sitting on somebody's neck for 8.5 minutes. Come on, man. No humanity, no dignity, no respect, no love for human life. You're sitting on somebody's neck for 8.5 minutes. Come on, man. But so I want to say thanks for joining me today, and I am so glad. I just wanted to come on here and just talk a little bit about the situation around the world, and because I know that it's on everybody's mind, it's on my mind, and so when I see stuff like that, then you see stuff like that, you think about other people. You say, I don't want this to happen to nobody else. This shouldn't have happened. Ahmaud Arbery should still be here. George Floyd should still be here, and all the countless African Americans. I wouldn't say countless, but I can say all of the African Americans that were killed at the hands of officers. I would say those killings didn't have to happen. So a lot of things are going to be changed. Congress, they're working on reform, and it's and also they do have a march. What's the name? Excuse me. What's that? That's his name. The minister. I think he has a march coming up in August. I believe he said August 28th. Yeah, August 28th. There's going to be a march on Washington. So, and they are going to be marching. So they said they haven't had a march on Washington since Martin Luther King, when he had a march on Washington. So they're having that August 28th, 2020. So I said, but I want to say thanks for joining me today. Glad to see you here. Glad you can be here. And it's time to bring about change. This shouldn't happen. And this shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And we definitely don't want it to happen again. You think about your own family, your friends. You're thinking about other people out there in the world, their family and all that. And so when you think about it, you're like, wow, we still here in 2020 and this is still happening. Nah, this should not be happening. And how many years since Martin Luther King was assassinated? I think he was assassinated, 1968? 1968. So, and they were marching back then, and now we're still marching. So I want to say thanks for joining me today. Glad to see you. Glad you could be here, and I hope to see you again on my next video. So I didn't want to do a entrepreneur video again. So I just said I wanted to I said I wanted to do a video just where I can just, you know, sit and talk, you know. But thanks for joining me. Glad you could be here. And I'll see you on my next video. So you all have a good one.